That's weird. There we go. Hi there, YouTube. Hope everybody's doing well. Make sure everybody can hear me here. Yeah, yes, presumably. Hooray! Yeah, it's actually been a really interesting couple days, good days, and a few things to talk about when we get into the questions. That's better. How goes it, Bill? It goes okay. Thanks very much for asking. It's been really interesting since Monday night, since we talked last, and real productive and real positive. So, hooray for that! I can get these windows all open and lined up. It's a little ratty here. So that's that, and then we'll do like that. Yeah. Okay. I think that'll do it. Okay, so yeah, hope everybody's doing well. And let's see. So when we took a message, the voice is a little scratchy. Got one of the questions on Monday night was, Bill, you're gonna have to do something about this website thing, and sure enough, I did. It's a pretty strong case of sunk cost fallacy, where I was just trying so hard to make this website connection to this Recurly bank work, and it's not a native connection. It doesn't. We had to build this plugin and had all these problems with it. So I finally just decided to go straight to Stripe. I checked out WP Member, which looked great, but we've got another membership plugin that's already working. So we just set up a second bank account at Stripe, and the members won't know any difference. And it's supposed to be bulletproof and streamlined. Ultimate Member is what it is. So I would think within the next day or two, we would be, I think we will be locked and ready to go after all this time. But for me personally, it's been just been an incredible 3 days, just in terms of this attitude readjustment. I obviously talked about this on Monday. I want to go too much detail on it because I know I have a lot of crossover here. But this NDU thing, no Roadrunner, nobody will have to re-register for anything. Let me just go take a step back before I go forward again. The people who came in before, let's say, September 1st, 2025, their credit cards are being processed, and that's all great. They're being processed by Recurly. Recurly sends it to Stripe, and Stripe sends it to us. But this is the breakthrough on my part. I just don't know why I couldn't have seen this earlier. I was just too deep into the problem solving, I guess. But starting on September 1st, there won't be any noticeable difference. You won't see any difference on the website. But starting on September 1st, if everything holds together, when you register, you won't your credit card information won't go to Recurly. It'll go to Stripe, which plays well with WordPress, and then we would have essentially two different databases for the banks, but there's no way that the members would know. The developer said you can migrate the people from Recurly over to Stripe. I said, no, we won't be doing that. We won't be doing that. That's not a risk I want to take. And so we just have two accounts. So and it should be bulletproof. I'm going to find out soon enough, because I am I am so far past waiting for this. It's been 5 months now, and just tired of clawing on to the cliffside. So this is it's been kind of the good news for me, is that just this attitude adjustment. Thank you, Roadrunner. Major attitude adjustment since this NDU thing, because that really was a smack in the face. The sunk cost fallacy in my case was, with the reluctance to go out and be doing the membership drives, which I believe I've gotten over. it was like here's a decent sized steady check from Daily Wire pretty much every year, and it took months and months and months. Took my focus away from BillWhittle.com, and so for 4 years now, 5 to 6 probably since 2019, I've just been split. You know, focus has been split, and I think probably anybody. But it's the kind of thing where it's like you just couldn't get there from here. At least that's what I thought. But in any event, I am I am like 100% committed now to the BillWhittle.com thing, the membership thing, and in addition to the truth bolts, I am I'm going to be bringing back the firewalls in addition, because I just am like I'm just in a really clear place. You know, the reason I stopped doing them, I'd done a bunch of them, but as I said many, many, many times, they had been, you know, getting 400,000 views, and the last several had, you know, 20,000, 25,000. I thought that sucks, and it just didn't dawn on me. It just didn't dawn on me that none of those matters. None of those numbers mattered. The only numbers of views that mattered were the membership views. That's all that mattered, and I'm going to do both. So yeah, and it's going to take a while to get some people back. Our regular Stratosphere crew and many other people have been with us this whole time. It's going to take a while to get people back, and it's not going to be just one episode or something. But that's, you know, that's what people want, and I've got a shop where I sell things, and you know, and so let's give them what they want. My brother wrote me a letter a week ago or so, which I kind of blew off because I was just scrambling around. But he's always been, he's a younger brother. He's probably 6, 7 years younger than me, and he sent me an email with a Word doc attached saying, my brother has always been more liberal, but he's really fallen into Trump derangements and I'm like really hard lately, like really, really hard. And I just didn't want to engage it. But he wrote me a letter and saying, listen, I really respect your intellect and I respect your integrity. And I have a bunch of questions, and I was wondering if you know, about Trump and conservatism, and I was wondering if you could answer them. I said, I can't do it right now. But I'm going to write him back and I'm going to say, I will do it. I will answer those questions, but I want to answer them publicly. So I think that'll be the next firewall. Will be, you know, his letter header was Dear Big Brother, so I think I'll call it Dear Big Brother, defense of the MAGA movement, because, you know, it's really there's so much of what they believe just isn't true, you know, just isn't true. And I'm looking forward to dealing with it. For example, I saw one of his posts that was talking about the number of trans athletes, which is really small. And I checked with Grok, and it turns out like the number of trans athletes in American high school and college women is something like 0.00001% or something. And he was using that point to say this. Why is everybody up in arms about this? Yes, Phil, this is the one that sold my F4. It's silverfish. Yeah, I had a 137 scale or something, 148 scale F4, my favorite model, best model I ever built, won an award, and this brother of mine sold it to a friend of his, and I looked around the house for it for days until my mom took mercy on me. So, yeah, I'll do that. But in any event, he was trying to make the point that it's only a very, very small percentage of people. Yes, he sold my F4, my F4E. It was a work of art. It's huge. It was, usually I did 172nd scale, but this was, I think, 148th. And man, I was heartbroken. I just, get it back. I was like, I think he broke it. Yeah, I'll let bygones be bygones. That happened, 55 years ago. I think 10 more years I'll get over it. But in any event, the response to this is the response is not it doesn't matter how many trans athletes there are. What matters is how dominant they are against biological women. If it turned out the trans athletes won 0.000002% of the total championships, then you could make a case anyway for, like, yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter. But the fact that you're competing against males is unfair to the females, and and um, and liberals should know that. And I don't see how one person's desires outweigh 4 or 5 million women, young women, girls' desire. It just doesn't. And then, I'm going to show some of these pictures of, can you spot the trans athlete? Yeah, and then there's the women's locker room and so on. And by the way, I mean, I know it, and you've seen it. And I saw it a lot when Leah Thomas was starting, and that was they would give the award to the trans athlete, and then all of the biological women would have to pretend to be happy, and you could see that they were forcing it. Now, some of them probably, I couldn't remember his name, Dave Big Bouquet, that's why I didn't say William Thomas. Some of them may have felt like genuinely happy for them, I suppose, but I could tell from a lot of faces, that they were saying this because they were supposed to say it, and so on. Marusha Dark says DeSantis is making it illegal to paint the roads rainbow. You might want to see today's right angle about that particular story. Hey, look at that. Let me just get that. I'm missing one letter in that name. Hang on a second. Anthony Montalvo. Just wanted to say hi to all you genuinely nice people. What a sweet thing to say. And hi to you too. You're also a genuinely nice person, I'm sure. So anyway, I've just been, really switched on about, like, just pushing this thing and so on. Now, one of the things I don't know, I honestly do not know what the chance of this is. But we did have an agreement with Daily Wire a year ago or more, to have a 30-day Daily Wire membership with the Bill Whittle membership so that people could see the historical series. There's an extremely thin chance that they might allow my members to watch that content, although I can't see any way that would happen really without me paying them a hunk of money. But I do think we can go after members and say, look, if we can get to 4,000 members or 5,000 members, I'll do the history series here. And we'll start with the Navy. It'll just be like a crowdfunding stretch goal. But I mean to come out hard for this, man. I really, really do. I'm anxious to get back in the game, and I'm anxious to get start pushing on some of these interview shows and see if I can't find my way onto Tim Pool or some of the other guys. And so this, this NDU thing was it was just a real smack in the face. And a good one, I really needed it. I had a dream last night, which was unusual for me to remember the dream, and it's an odd dream. I was at an airport, and I was inside a commercial jetliner. I often have dreams inside commercial jetliners, frequently. And in this case, it was on the ground, it was parked, it was like 2 a.m, and I was inside this airplane, and my job was to clean the airplane, vacuum up all the little pieces of crackers and wipe down all the tray tables and all this stuff. And And my mood and my attitude was just so good. It was just like, all right, we're going to get this plane clean. There are people forward on the flight deck, and it was like none of this. You wish I was up there. It's like, nope, my job is to get this plane clean, and I just went up and down the aisles and cleaned it, and I was happy to do it. And and it it really, was I think a real sign of like just a major attitude shift here. So he can't steal my work, Steve. I got paid for half of it, and I did all of the work. I did, I delivered a finished show, but I got half up front, and so I'm not giving that back. And I don't get the second half. So that was tough. But mostly it was we hate it and we don't want the editor touching it anymore. And it's like, okay, why am I scrambling to get jobs for these fossils? When it's when I just thought it was I just thought it was really good, and then it's just the whole thing just kind of circled back, and it's like, well, Clown, time to take this. It's not like it wasn't taken seriously before. Like I said, I was just I got dependent on this external jobs to because they're reliable paychecks, but I'm not being shy about the membership thing now. Once we get this thing hooked up, I'm going at it hard. I'm going to put some advertising money behind it hard. I've got I think I finished the Zeus sequence. I can show that to you real quick. And then we'll get into the questions, because this is time when I can talk with the developer. Hang on, there's a message from him. Sorry. Oh, I just got some good news. I'm hosting an event here in LA. I'm emceeing an event in LA. And they had a featured speaker, and he backed out. And I just this second got a text, and the replacement that I'll be introducing is David frickin' Mamet. That's exciting. So, let me just take this real quick. Oh, let me show you the Zeus thing, because this James Walker says, "What do you think of this Generation Jones nonsense?" I hate the name, but I can relate to the sentiment. The tail end of the baby boom, the last 5 years of the baby boom. Late, born in the late 50s and stuff. Yeah, I saw that, Marisha. Thanks. I don't know who he is. I don't know who he is, Tom Bilyeu, or anything about him. But it's time to find out. Yeah, I'll definitely be doing some Glengarry Glen Ross material there. Anyway, let me find the Zeus thing. We'll run that, and then we'll get on with the show, and we'll get some questions done. Sorry. Sorry, 1 second. It's I am interfacing with the dev here. Okay, where'd I put it? It's just the Zeus thing. I just think it's fun. Now I just have to find it. It really is. it really is stupid fun, this thing. Okay, ready? There it comes. I'll drop it into YouTube first, where it'll cycle, and then I'll drop it into Twitch. This is just the Zeus part, but it's fun.
Behold, it is I, the mighty Zeus. Hey, how's it going? In the before times, in the time of the Grumps, many years ago, I appeared unto you in forms that I thought you could understand. Afterburner, firewall, and the very earth shook with their power and majesty. But lo, that was many years ago. Now, behold, the great cosmic clock. It is time that I should again appear before you in a form familiar to you.
Racist! Homophobe!
Homophobe! Fascist!
Silence, you puny mortals! Where was I? The time has come again for a new series of long-format revelations, for behold, down in the depths of his infernal workshop, mighty Vulcan has...
Vulcan is a Roman god, not a Greek god!
Piss off, Karen! Mighty Vulcan has brought forth from his forges a new tool, an intricate mechanism for delivering unto you the truth. Behold, it is I, the mighty Zeus. Hey, how's it going? In the before times, in the time of the...
So that's that. Let's see here. Okay. And we're back. I didn't take out the reference to the atomic bombs yet. I'm working on the hang on. All right, so here's what's going on here, and I'm sorry to have to I don't think this is going to work. So we've got a access code that that the dev needs, and it goes to Shelly, and Shelly has to send it to me, and I think the thing has like a 30-second lifespan. And I just have to relay these things. Hang on a second. It's going to time out. It's ridiculous. Sorry. Nothing easy. Guys, I hate to put you on hold, but we'll try again, period. Sorry. So, yeah, I'm trying to get this done. You get a refund for this, absolutely, yes. Your full ticket price will be completely refunded. Hey everybody, we're just waiting for some authorization here. Hang on. Exciting, isn't it? Just waiting to hear back to see if we got it in time, period. I know, we got to watch the paint dry, but this is to get the website functional. So, you know, I gotta do. Bring up the questions here. All right, we're going to the questions and we'll see what we have here. This is just so tedious. And this is just my whole frickin' life now, you know. But I'm going to look on the bright side and keep these things coming. Thanks very much for curating this, Marusha. And it's our friend Jenny Waterman. Hey, hooray. Hello, sir, and all. It's been so too long. Sorry. Please just call me Bill. I'm out here creating my own projects too, and it's a bit consuming, but I still love this little cadre of opiners. That's what you are. You're a cadre of opiners. My question might suck, but I'm sincerely wanting help. I watched a documentary in 2009 or 10, of which I couldn't find the title just now, and was convinced of the possibility of 9/11 being an inside job, that Cheney was part of planning it, but Bush legitimately didn't know. Your mood changed from jovial to angry patriot in 0 seconds flat when the 9/11 conspiracy theory came up on Monday. So I come seeking your insight and opinion. Would love not to believe Cheney is a warmonger who set up the attack in order to change foreign policy quickly instead of having it change over decades. And all the other things, please don't be mad. I'm genuine. Love me some Bill Whittle and save Will. Godspeed, Sinead. Yeah, it's. I think we found out in the comment section it's loose change. I've never seen it. I have to watch it. Boy, where do you start with this? You know, the Watergate break-in was a tiny, tiny little thing, and there were only 3 or 4 people that knew about it. It was a minor little burglary. and it was very important, had high stakes, and 3, 4, 5 people knew about it, and it leaked. In order to do 9/11, you'd have to have hundreds of thousands of people ready to murder 3,000 Americans. It just doesn't. Why? In order to get a political, in order to get a foreign policy come out the way you want it. I am ready to believe that that the deep state purposely put a very weak security detail on Donald Trump, and that's about as far as I'm ready to go. They didn't put a bomb on Donald Trump's plane. Let's just think this through for a second, okay? All of the crimes that have been committed by these people like Comey and treason and Bolton, Hillary Clinton, all of this could have been prevented by getting rid of one man, and that's Donald Trump. They could have put a professional hitman on him. They could have blown up his airplane. They could have blown up Mar-a-Lago. They could have done any number of things. And that was life or death for them. That wasn't like, I'd like a different foreign policy. This is life or death for them. The idea that you're gonna blow up the 2 World Trade Centers, the Pentagon, and presumably the Capitol building, if they hadn't done it for Flight 93, it is the only reason you can even contemplate that kind of thing, that you can even allow it to get into your mind in the first place, is because you've seen way, way too many movies about mega criminals and all the rest of it. It is absolutely impossible what they're claiming. Not the least, the single best piece of evidence against it being an inside job is that people say it was a controlled demolition. And as I said before, in order to rig a 10-story or a 20-story building for a controlled demolition, that generally takes about 2 or 3 months, where they have to rip out all of this stuff, and they have to arc weld cuts into the structural beams and place shape charges in there, and it takes months, and the number of det cord cables coming out of a building that's about to be brought down is hundreds of them. The World Trade Center never closes, and the entire, nothing even close to that size has ever been brought down, and so why, if you're going to bring down the World Trade Center through controlled demolition, why fly airliners into it? Why? To throw people off the trail? It is the single greatest case of ever not needing anything. You have Al Qaeda and a motive. You've got 19 suspects, well, 20 suspects. One of them didn't make the flight. You've got them flight training. We know they got on those airplanes. We know that they were airplanes. We know what happened to those airplanes. They were on radar tracks the whole time. Those radar tracks are available to everybody, by the way. It's not like you have to break into some secret place to find out what the national radar tracks is. They flew these airplanes into these buildings because they're jihadists, and because they thought America was weak. You have motive, suspects, opportunity, you've got everything. And up against this is this unbelievably complex, unbelievably brutal, secret plan by the government. And, Bucka 588 says, New York City firefighter here, 9/11 conspiracies make my blood boil. I'm right there with you, pal. I am half a step behind you. All of this for what? To do what? To do what? You know, I've heard people say that they flew a plane into the Pentagon because there were files there that that they wanted destroyed. So the best way to get rid of some files is to fly an airplane into this. I'll just give you one or two examples. Among the many, 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 many people who would have had to been in on this conspiracy was the guy who was the chaplain at my dad's interment in Arlington National Cemetery in August of 2002. He was standing on a hill on September 11th, and he'd heard from the people that he'd heard from the military that there was something going on in New York, and he was hearing the sound, and he and the person he was working with heard this whine increasing. They thought they were about to get hit by a bomb, and they look up, and 50 feet over their head goes a 757 into the side of the Pentagon. They felt the heat flash. They didn't hear the sound. All of that makes sense. That's often the case, is that when your systems get overloaded, the human brain, first thing it shuts down is sound. But they felt the heat flash, and then they said it started raining little pieces of airplane and little pieces of people. So that guy, who's a pastor at Arlington National Cemetery and has been for 25 years, he's in on it because they're claiming it's a missile. All of the commuters, this is not like something happened out in the middle of nowhere. All of the commuters that are driving along the parkway that can see the Pentagon, they all have to be in on it. If one of them has a camera, and shows a missile hitting the building, it's all over, right? One picture, one photo, it's all over. It's absolutely insane. And as always the case when you're dealing with conspiracy theorists, no two of them can agree on exactly what happened. People who know what happened can all agree. I know exactly what happened. 19 Al-Qaeda hijackers got on 4 airliners. The 4 airliners they got on were specifically chosen to be East Coast to West Coast flights because they are more full of fuel that way. They took off from their destinations. They were all tracked on radar. We have the voice recorders of the guys in Arabic. We've got all of this stuff of them flying back to New York City and flying into the buildings. We've got all of it, and now we're going to have to invent something where all of these nefarious things were already in place. These demolition charges were already in place when they flew the buildings into the buildings that already had charges in it. Somebody tell me how that works. You know, these people say, well, there's been buildings that have caught fire and they didn't collapse from the heat. You know, the jet fuel doesn't burn hot enough to melt steel. It doesn't have to melt steel. It just has to weaken steel. You ever have a pat of butter that's been in the fridge, right? And you warm it up, it gets soft before it melts, right? It just has to get soft. The second tower to get hit was the first one to go down because it got hit lower. There was more weight above the damage. And then you hear these physicists, oh my God, hang on a second. Hang on. Give me 1 second. It looks like we got in. I'm not getting off of this topic here. And we got these physicists saying, well, there's no way that an airplane wing could go through the World Trade Center. No, it's impossible. Really? Yeah, airplanes are just made out of thin aluminum. Okay. Well, a 747 fully loaded is about 1 million pounds. So think about that. It's 1 million pounds. When you see a 747 fully loaded, damn near 1 million pounds. So if airplanes are so fragile and nothing but thin aluminum skin, what carries that 1 million pounds through the air, through turbulence, successfully? What holds it up? The wing spar is what holds it up. The wing spar. The wing spar is a piece of structural steel that is constructed in an incredibly brilliant way. But all of the weight of the airplane, including the engines, is transmitted to the spar, to the main spar that runs the length of the jetliner. And that is a steel box, and it can carry pretty nearly 1,000,000 pounds. Now, when you fly that into something at 500 miles an hour, there are people saying, no, the plane would have just bounced off the World Trade Center. Really? How do you know that, by the way? How do you know? Are you a mechanical engineer? You've calculated the number of joules that a fully loaded, fully fueled jetliner carries? I'm just talking about the impact value. Not forget about the fire. You've got all this. You've got all the numbers calculated. It's like when people say the Apollo astronauts could never have gotten through the Van Allen radiation belts. And I wouldn't mind at all. I wouldn't get angry at all. I'm not angry at Janie. I'm angry because she asked in good faith. I'm angry at the people who come out and say there's no way that the astronauts could have survived the passage through the Van Allen belts. It would have been fatal. My answer to that is, well, that's a pretty good blocker. So if traveling through the radiation, the Van Allen belts is fatal, how much of a dose did they take going through a Van Allen? You know what? Don't even tell me how much of a dose they took getting through the Van Allen belts. First tell me how much radiation can a human take? How much radiation do you have to take for it to be fatal? What do you mean? Well, you said that they take a fatal dose. So before we talk about how much radiation there is in the Van Allen belt, what's a fatal dose? How much radiation kills people? What does it take? Not a clue. Not a clue. Not a clue. Right? So, people just make these assertions. They make these assertions. And when you look at, it's interesting. I'm going to do this right now because I was going to do it for the 9/11 thing. Here, let's play together, shall we? Let's talk to Super Grok. Here's the question. Hi, Grok. I always say hi in case they take over. I want them to have, I want them to use me in their underground sugar capes. Can you calculate, in joules, parentheses, approximately, the difference in impact energy between a B-25 bomber it's on its way to land, 1/4 fuel, impacting at, let's be generous, 250 knots, versus a fully loaded 767 impacting at 500, be generous there too, knots. So people say the Empire State Building took a plane hit. The Empire State Building has external stone. It's made of stone. It's basically, 250 knots is real fast for a B-25. I'm giving them the benefit in everything. Grok is analyzing the impact energy. Great thing about Grok is Grok shows its work. Okay, I have to get this one thing to this guy. Please check your email and check the link in your email. Do not click it. Copy the link and paste it to me. Okay, hang on. Sorry, 1 second. Oh, come on. Sorry. It's B25 is 974 gallons, 6 pounds a gallon. Yeah, the Empire State Building was made of an entirely different construction technique. The World Trade Center, despite these vertical things, is essentially a glass veneer building with an internal steel core. Boy, it's working on this. But just give you an idea, because it's got nothing to do with the fire, right? This is just the impact damage when it hits, and all of this stuff, all of this stuff. The thing, some people say that the planes were controlled remotely. That'll be news for the people who talk to them from air traffic control. That'll be news for the voices on the cockpit flight data recorders that they found in the wreckage. It's just, there is just so much that is just plain ridiculous on its face. Okay, hang on, here we go. Sorry. There we go. Okay. The kinetic energy for the B25 is 8 times 10 to the 7th joules, and for the 767, it's 5 times 10 to the 9th joules. Oh, okay. The energy impact of the Boeing 67 is approximately 7,256% greater than the B-25. So, there's nothing that these people say. There's nothing that these people say, and there's nothing that you can say that will make the case that this was an inside job. I saw Marusha said something earlier. I just glanced at it. Said, "Oh, I saw this interview with this guy." What, if you believe, if you're one of these people who, God, I'd love to hear some arguments about this. What do you think is the most compelling argument that it's not what we all saw with our own eyes? I get pretty emotional about this one, but I'm calming down. Tell me what you think is the most compelling evidence that it wasn't what everybody saw. Swen saw it with his own eyes. Insurance fraud? People who spoke out against it died soon after speaking out. Well, first of all, let's find out who we're talking about. That's an assertion, and a lot of people talked about it. And what this does, yeah, there was somebody probably had a dispute with somebody at the terminal authority. You know, they probably owed like $300 worth of parking fees, so they decided to bring down the Twin Towers in order to hide the evidence. The one that has most people reasonably suspicious is WTC 7, is the World Trade Center building number 7. Because it fell down a couple hours after the Twin Towers and no airplane hit it. But I'll tell you what did hit it. I think this is it. Here. I'm pretty sure that is WTC 7 in the background. And if it's not, it doesn't matter. When these two buildings collapsed, the amount of wreckage that fell on that building is almost unimaginable. And then a fire burned for 4 hours, and then the building collapsed. Yep, no explanation for that. Can't possibly be what we saw with our own eyes. Imagine these this much concrete and steel falling onto a building and then having it burn for 2 or 3 hours. Yeah, it's absolutely no way to explain it. Where did I put it? Yeah, here. Look at that. They're like scissors. And so people say, well, apartment buildings have caught fire and they didn't collapse. They didn't collapse because they didn't have 110 stories of concrete and steel fall on their roof and then burn. So anyway, and it goes on and on and on. And they you know, there's some people who think, oh well, the passengers were taken off of the jets. You see, taken off the jets. They flew the jets somewhere else without radar coverage somehow. And then They took the passengers off and then murdered them and either dumped them in the ocean or buried them in this place or whatever the case may be. And you really have to ask yourself, honestly, you really do have to ask yourself, how emotionally disturbed do you have to be to believe that you can get thousands of people to go along with this? You know? Thousands of people to go along with this. How effed up do you have to be as an individual to believe that you can get thousands of people to do all of it? To do all of it. What's your alternative hypothesis for Building 7, Marusha? He says we won't do it justice here, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. Here's another one about Cheney. He took an active role in the government, not the largely ornamental role of a typical VP. So, okay, let's just, again, the best way to prove these things wrong is to just plain take what they're saying. I'm Dick Cheney, and I want to start wars because I can make money from weapons sales. So I want to go to war with the Middle East, and I want to go to war in Iraq and all these other things. Now, Dick Cheney is already a multimillionaire, but just put that aside. It's not like he's living in the street. I'm Dick Cheney, and Dick Cheney decides he wants to bring the buildings down. So who does Dick Cheney call? And what does he say? And who does he talk to? What happened to the pilots on board those planes? In fact, let's just take that one example. Okay, just that one example. If the 9/11 hijackers flew the planes into the buildings, then you don't need a conspiracy. So who did? Who's gonna pilot an airplane into a building and kill himself in order for Dick Cheney to make money? Would you do that? Can you think of anybody who would do that? The only people I can think of who were fanatical enough to give their lives for this would be if they were convinced that they were going to get a reward in the afterlife. And it turns out you have 19 people on those planes who do exactly that. I'm going to watch Loose Change, and I'll just deal with every single one of those points one by one. Joseph Talbot says they say remote control. Who put the remote controls in a jet? You don't just turn on a switch, on the cockpit and then be able to fly the thing with a controller. Who installed the remote control mechanisms into the jets? And why didn't the pilots see it? And why did the pilots go? Hey, there's all these servo mechanisms on this jet. It's probably nothing. Who's going to do it? And who is going to murder 3,000 Americans in order to make Dick Cheney rich? Well, they would have all gotten paid. Well, did you ever watch Goodfellas? Remember? In Goodfellas, most people have seen Goodfellas. They pull off the heist, right? They pull off this gigantic heist, and they get millions of dollars. And they're all going to live the good life because they did it for the money, right? They did it for the money. They're going to be paid a lot of money. Well, what does Robert De Niro say at that Christmas party? He says, don't any of you spend any of this, because if you start living the high life, people are going to start asking where you got the money. So, I mean, I sometimes just really am speechless when it comes to these kind of things, and when see, even if Dick Cheney were to do all of this by himself, there's still no justification. There's no possible justification for it. Now, when I deal with this in earnest, I'm going to have to say, look, I don't trust our government, but Donald Trump being elected is the end of the line, is the end of the line for these people. And he was elected. They tried to kill him twice. I'm pretty convinced about that. But they certainly didn't hire a professional, because if they'd hired a professional, he wouldn't have missed. The best they could do, assuming, well, I don't think there's much doubt about this, the best that the deep state could do to prevent absolute catastrophe for everything that they've worked for was to put the worst Secret Service agents they could on the job at Butler. That's the best they could do. Maybe professional assassins didn't like the idea of doing it because they knew they weren't going to get out alive. So, you know, am I familiar with Operations Northwoods? It outlines a CIA plot to create a false flag using planes into WTC to get America to go to war with Cuba during JFK. That was a real plot. First of all, did Operation Northwoods happen? Or did somebody say, no, this is kind of nuts? Let's have a quick look. Proposed false flag operation, which originated in the Department of Defense of the United States in 1962. Proposal called for CIA operatives to both stage and commit acts of terrorism against the American military and civilian targets, blame them on the Cuban government, and then use them to justify a war against Cuba. Possibilities of fabricated shoot down of U.S. fighter aircraft, possible assassination of Cuban immigrants, sinking boats of Cuban refugees to the high seas, blowing up a U.S. ship, orchestrating terrorism in the U.S., and so on. The proposals were rejected by President John F. Kennedy. Why? Why did he reject it? We have invasion plans for Canada, Great Britain, France, Japan, Bermuda. They had a plan for exploding cigars. They had a plan for all kinds of things. And notice, by the way, that if this is one of your big cards that you're playing, notice that what they're really talking about is killing Cubans and maybe a fighter pilot who ejected. I'll talk about killing 3,000 Americans. I just, did it happen? I agree with you, Andrew. That's the question. Did it happen? No, it didn't happen. Bay of Pigs happened. See, this is actually an interesting point. The Bay of Pigs was a catastrophe, but you could make the Bay of Pigs invasion happen because the Bay of Pigs invasion required the cooperation, or at the very least the acknowledgement, the knowledge of thousands and thousands of members of the military. You can convince military men to launch an invasion against Cuba. You cannot convince military men to kill 3,000 Americans. Who's going to? This is the thing that simply blows my mind. It just blows my mind. I got to know, as I've said before, as the last thing I'll say, I got to know a CIA operative who was in the agency for 35, 40 years. And I've told you this before, and I'll tell you again. They had a bug in a room where Jane Fonda and a bunch of other leftists were going into North Vietnam. Dick was working at, I think it was in the Philippines, but it was the way into North Vietnam for Americans, right? And Dick had gone to a lot of trouble to get a bug in this room because who was she married to at the time? The communist, French communist. She'd married so many communists it really narrows it down. But her boyfriend, her husband at the time, we were real interested in, and she was with him, and they couldn't do Tom Hayden. No, it was I'm pretty sure. No, it definitely wasn't Tom Hayden. It was a foreign national. It might have been the guy who directed Barbarella or something. Somebody was going in there with them, and they couldn't spy on him. They couldn't spy on them. Roger Vadim might have been Roger Vadim. They wanted to listen to Roger Vadim, but they couldn't do it because there were Americans in the room, and they're not allowed to spy on Americans. No, let me get. I got that backwards. They were allowed to listen because Roger Vadim was in the room, and he was a foreign national. But they couldn't just listen in on Jane Fonda because it was against the law to listen in on American citizens. And so you've got CIA agents refusing to listen in on a hidden microphone, but they're perfectly willing to kill 3,000 Americans. And by the way, it's a miracle it was 3,000 Americans. It really was supposed to be 40,000 Americans. When the KGB, when they kidnapped a Russian agent, or a Russian in Beirut, the KGB said, if you don't bring this guy back, we're going to kill all of you, and we're going to kill all of your families. And the kidnappers didn't believe them, so they didn't return the Russian. And the KGB did that. They killed all of the kidnappers and killed all of their family. They didn't kidnap any Russians after that. And I talked to him and said, yeah, seems effective. He says, yeah, I'm not working for a government that kills people's families. That's one agent. In one case, it just defies imagination. It just defies imagination. And the one thing you will never see from these people ever is give me a timeline. Because give me a timeline. Okay, tell me what happened. You tell me what happened. Well, the planes loaded up in Boston, yeah, okay. And then they took off, yeah. And then they went to a secret base in Canada at Yellowknife. Okay. And then they took the passengers off, right? And then they loaded a remote control system onto the planes, and then they flew them into the World Trade Center. They'll never give you that, because if they have to give you an explanation, there's so many ways to shoot down their alternative explanation. They just give you things that sound funny, right? There's no way that an airplane that size could have left. One of the things they said is if you look at the crash site in where did Flight 93 go down in Pennsylvania? I forget the name of the town. It's a pretty small crater, and there's very little wreckage. You could find the engine turbines there, but there's very little wreckage and very little human remains. Shanksville, thanks, Dave. And these 9/11 guys say, this is ridiculous. Look at this. There's no wreckage here. We look at all these other airplane crashes with wreckage, and we see all of this stuff. It's like you see airplanes flying into the ground like this, but you don't see them flying straight into the ground like that at 400, 500, 600 knots. Because when that happened on EasyJet in the Everglades, that airplane went straight down and disappeared. Just went into the mud. And yeah, so I'm gonna watch Loose Change, and I won't have any problem shooting down every one of those things. But you really do have to ask yourself, what kind of person can genuinely believe that thousands and thousands of Americans were perfectly willing to murder other Americans to make Dick Cheney rich? So which is more likely? Let's get rid of thousands of them. Which is more likely? Do you think it's more likely that there are 20 people who are ready to die to make Dick Cheney rich? Or do you think it's more likely that you could find 20 people who were ready to die in order to become martyrs in heaven. You know? Marusha says, I would recommend you read the book Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which outlines the 3-step method for how intel agencies work to overthrow regimes: bribery, assassination, and coup. I am right with you. And 9/11 was not bribery, it wasn't assassination, and it wasn't a coup. There was a coup in this country in 2020. So I'm not just this, wide-eyed little doe. But anyway, yeah, that one's going to be the only one that I'm going to really have a hard time with. The moon landing is going to get me sarcastic, but 9/11 makes me insane. Makes me absolutely insane. Okay, let's see what's next. Not in the slightest bit mad at you, Janie. Asked in good faith, and it's just a hot topic. That's actually a good question too. P7 2017 says, I only now was moved to ask, what did they hope to accomplish? Well, then let's just ask that question. Let's say that the World Trade Center and the Pentagon attack were orchestrated by Dick Cheney. So let's say he succeeded. What did Dick Cheney get out of this? He pulled it off, right? He pulled it off. He pulled off the crime of the century or of the millennium. He managed to pull all of these things off, have everything work like clockwork. The guys flew airplanes into buildings that were already rigged to explode, and so on and so on and so on. And Cheney got exactly what it wanted, went exactly to plan. It was clockwork. What did Dick Cheney get out of this? Because I know what the actual people think they got out of it. The doc said foreign policy changed. But what does Cheney get out of that? What does he get out of it? He's just risked anybody. They toppled Iraq. Okay, so Dick Cheney is going to hang by the neck until he's dead. If there's one person with a camera in any of the cars driving by the Pentagon that snaps a picture of the actual missile instead of the airplane, right? So what's the risk reward calculation for Dick Cheney? This is an important distinction. Marusha says, my personal view is that Bush-Cheney lacked security prior to 9/11, enabling it to happen, and then took advantage of the crisis afterwards to enrich themselves. That at least is not insane. That at least is not impossible. I think there's plenty of good reasons why you could show that it didn't happen, but that at least acknowledges that 19 hijackers flew the planes into the buildings collapsed because of the structural damage and the heat damage, and none of that loose change stuff has to happen for that to be true. They leveled the same charge against Roosevelt. He knew the attack was coming. No, he didn't know the attack was coming. He knew the Japanese were probably going to be going to war, but it's not the same thing as knowing that they're going to hit Pearl Harbor on December 7th. Why would the President of the United States lose the entire fleet? If they had launched a third strike, and they should have, and they almost did, but if they'd launched a third strike, if the Japanese had launched a third strike and hit the fuel supplies at Pearl Harbor, they thought they were going to get the carriers. They would have gotten Enterprise, but she got delayed by bad weather. She was going to be there. She was going to be there on, I think on December 6th. So the Japanese had a chance to knock out the Navy. That was the plan, is to knock out the Navy. So what advantage does Franklin Roosevelt, of who I am not a fan, What advantage does he have by having the United States Navy at the bottom of the ocean? What possible advantage does he get out of that? What does he get? Knowing that war is coming is not the same thing as knowing that an attack is coming. They had radar that had just been installed at Pearl Harbor, and the radar picked up the incoming Japanese attack, and everybody was so astonished on that day that the people who saw the radar blips coming in said, this has to be a flight of B-17s that we're expecting. What else could it be? What else could it be? When people were watching 9/11 live, and you watch that first tower burning, now everybody's got their TV cameras on it, and then the second plane hits. What was your reaction? Was it, I knew it? No, your reaction was, what is happening? Oh my God, what's happening? That's what a sneak attack is. That's why they're successful. Rusha says, most politicians left and right are corrupt, secure in the belief they're above the law. All the crimes Pelosi, Clinton, Obama did, you could ask what they did to gain and who'd go along with it. Pelosi got a lot of money out of it. So did the Clintons. And I am willing to accept that Hillary Clinton had people murdered. There is compelling evidence for that. But that's not the same thing as needing 50,000 co-conspirators to murder people. You can do that with one professional hitman. And Bill is not suicidal. That's right. You got that right. All right, moving on. Let's see what we got here. Where did I put my questiones? Oh, here. Capital G Geek, greetings from the swamps of Northern Virginia. The Camp of the Saints is being published again after being out of print. Copyright holder didn't want to spread far-right propaganda. Have you read it? No, never even heard of it. Is there a more prescient dystopia? Maybe the Caliphate by Tom Kratman for the Islamic overtake of Europe. 1984 has the surveillance. Brave New World has the hedonism and the depravity. What dystopias do you see in today's headlines? You can download Camp of the Saints from the Internet Archive. And here's a link. Also think you should do some kind of advertisement for America leading up to the 250th anniversary. I also think it would be helpful if you would spec out your projects as if you were having someone else do them and then treat them as if you were working for a client. I asked Grok and it said you should be using Stripe for WordPress payment processor. Well, that we're actually working on. The thing that concerns me most about the future of this country is the destruction of the social fabric among a significant portion of our population. It's not the majority of the population, but it's significant. I am enormously heartened in the last couple years by seeing that Gen Zers and Alphas are becoming they said that the youngest voters in 2020 versus 2024, young men moved to the right by 44 points. 44 points. That's an 88-point shift in terms of you gain some, you take them away from others, right? So that has me greatly encouraged. But the ghettoization of culture, the depravity of it, the sense of entitlement, people who walk into stores and just grab things from the shelves and walk out of it without the slightest care in the world, all of this lack of responsibility, the refusal of people to hand over their driver's license or not get out of the cars on a traffic stop, this pretty much it's millennials, but mostly Gen Z, this instantaneous rebellion against all authority at all times is, you can't run a trust-based society like that. you just can't. You don't have a society that functions if there's nobody respects authority. Abuses of authority are things that I despise, like most other people. But but when but when you see people who have no problem whatsoever with, and it's not even little things like stealing. It's things like Carnival Cruise Lines banned a number of things because the cruises were just becoming unmanageable. But just take as one example these little Bluetooth speakers, right? So people would go on a cruise, and some person in a lounge chair has got a Bluetooth speaker, and they're playing their rap music at 100 decibels, and they don't give a damn about the people sitting next to them. They just don't care. They're actually highly amused by the idea that somebody would have a problem with that. This selfishness and self-centeredness and narcissism and lack of respect or sympathy or anything, this automatic rebellion and running your mouth and inability to admit that you're wrong, on and on and on and on and on, is really dangerous. And when you look at just look at like the Grammy Awards, just look at the Grammy Awards, and what do you see, at the Grammy Awards? It is mainstream. I was talking with Natasha about this. Turns out they've changed it, but it's actually an interesting discussion. What used to be the Kodak Center, where the Academy Awards lived for 20 years. I remember when they built that. I used to live right there. I used to live 2/10 of a mile from the corner of Hollywood and Highland, where the Kodak Theater and the Academy Awards are. And I lived there in the early 90s. And they built this giant complex, and all of the motif was Babylon. And that wasn't lost on me. Babylonian architecture, Babylonian iconography, winged bulls, Nebuchadnezzar kind of thing, Babylon. I found out that they said that they did it in sort of as an homage to D.W. Griffith's Intolerance, which built full-scale sets of Babylon, which cost hundreds of millions of dollars by today's money. But if you look at this film Intolerance, D.W. Griffith invented film. Birth of a Nation was the first modern film, was the first film to have cutaways, tracking shots, close-ups, all of it. He just invented the language of film. He was a complete racist, made a movie, go KKK. But he made this film called Intolerance. And it was about the fall of Babylon. And the fall of Babylon has a very strong biblical component. Babylon is Baal and human sacrifice and Satanism and all the rest of that stuff. And there it is on display, man. It's just, every time I saw it, every time I drive past it, I would just say, they're advertising their allegiance. Advertising it. My friend Andrew Breitbart got famous by writing a book called The Hollywood Babylon. And Babylon is the Antichrist. Babylon is sin and hedonism, and Hollywood has always been that. I was profoundly changed by the year 2020, and I think many of you were too. I never, ever in a million years would have credited many of the things that I believe are true now prior to 2020. But I really think there's some compelling evidence. I think there's some very compelling evidence that that children are at the very least being horribly abused and may in fact be murdered. It wouldn't surprise me That's how diseased it is. Jeremy Boring, long before he started Daily Wire, when we were working together, he was making a lot of doing a lot of meetings with studios, and got some relatively high level meetings working on some projects. And he said that what the way these people talk in these meetings, you walk into the room, you're complete strangers. You walk into the room, and some guy starts talking about how he would love to do Scarlett Johansson. What do you think, Jim? Oh man, I dare up. What about you, Noel? Yeah, I think she's super hot. And it's just like the first thing out of the gate is this assumption that you are there. Jeremy said that every deal in Hollywood is signed in the flesh, and I really do believe it, and I think that I think we're really starting to see the veil being lifted on Kirk's. Is a great word. Is just mass scale depravity, just plain evil depravity, and I really liked Tropic Thunder, and I thought Tom Cruise's time on screen in Tropic Thunder was Academy Award material. I thought Cruise was absolutely brilliant in that. And the reason I think he's brilliant in that is because I've been around these people. I was a Hollywood editor for 10 years, and I was an editor of a behind the scenes movie show. I got to see these people before the cameras were rolling, and after they stopped rolling, and I got to watch them, and I saw Harvey Weinstein on 4 episodes, I think. And what Tom Cruise did with that guy in that scene with Matthew McConaughey is exactly how it works, It's exactly how it works. Playa, The temptation is overwhelming. You get women, you get money, you get fame, you get power, you get all of it. And there's pretty compelling evidence that this is a little more organized than it looks, and that there are certain things that you're expected to do. There's somebody's pointed out that a lot of Hollywood stars had come out with really short blonde haircuts, and and these men had to wear dresses, and all of this stuff, man. It's just I believe it's going to come out, and I believe when Dan Bongino said that he'd seen things that made his blood run cold, that's what he was talking about, because I can't imagine anything that would scare Dan Bongino. I really cannot imagine anything. There you go. Did I get that right? So that's what I think the American dystopia is absolute lack of responsibility or what's the word I'm looking for? Obligation. Everything's about me. I want everything now. Everything all the time, from Life in the Fast Lane, Everything all the time. So, anyway, moving on. Ray Juarez. Hey, Bill, I'm checking in on how everything going after the great mental shift you had on Monday. And for Truth Bolts, I like the idea of just having a very short cameo of Tyson in the background. Yeah, that was fun. The big science stand might be a bit much for a running gag, though. You might also want to trim the Zeus bit somewhat. I did cut it down a little bit. Feels like it drags on a bit, especially for a promo. Keep it snappy, and having a bunch of audience members' emails in some voices for the angry Karen crowd would be a good way to keep people from feeling like it's AI slop. Bad audio kills videos, and crowd voices are a bit too AI for my Gen Z ear. Hope you're doing well, and thanks for all the great stuff. I usually watch the day after work. Lulls me right to sleep at my desk. All right. All jokes aside, keep up the great work. Thank you very much. Marusha says, if you really want to go down this road of satanic symbols, you should look up Jordan Maxwell's lectures. That kind of thing I'm very interested in. and the number of symbols that pedophiles use, and the code word for pedophiles, and all of this stuff. And when you see it out there, man, I've seen some things that really, really got my attention. Now, I'd like to hear the other side of that story. It's always good to hear the other side of the story. When you hear one side of the story, you believe just about anything. But yeah, man, it's pretty dark out there. We got a Roadrunner, Marisha Dark, Steve Young, Jacob Belcheck, Eric Blake. I guess I can get through it. I'm getting a little sore here. Try it. Roadrunner, greetings, friend Bill. First, briefly, I like the idea Ray Juarez mentions above in Truth Bolts. Don't call Tyson by his name. Use labels like big science or progressive science instead, while maybe using Bill Nye, the guy who has no idea what science really is occasionally. My question is, I believe the First Amendment to the Constitution needs to be modified. Congress shall make no law abridging the freedom of the press is too broad, doesn't take into account when the press is intentionally presenting outright lies and falsehood. For example, here CNN states authoritatively that a semi-automatic rifle can shoot dozens of bullets in just one trigger pull. Well, see, that's your problem, Roadrunner. It's a fully semi-automatic rifle. You must have missed the CNN story about the fully semi-automatic rifles that they have out there on the market. But the point stands. As you know from before the tragic boating accident, this is blatantly false. There will be thousands of progressives that believe semi-automatic is synonymous with machine gun. Fully semi-automatic. Since changing the Constitution should not be done lightly, see the 18th Amendment, maybe Congress should pass a law that news organizations can be sued by consumers for false statements, but not sued by the government. As the late great Robert Heinlein wrote, a managed democracy's greatest strength is a free press when free is defined as responsible and the managers define what is irresponsible. I know it's a slippery slope, but I still believe the press needs to be somehow held accountable for their harmful actions to the country and its citizens. Your thoughts on accountability? Please keep up the great work and let Shelley know from us that she's a real treasure. She really is. Thank you very much. She's absolutely amazing. Yeah, I think Marisha's, got it, and just said the press can be gone after for fraud and defamation. And Trump is it 3 now that he's won, or 2? And Trump won. What's interesting is, it's one thing to win a defamation case where somebody is defaming you, but Trump won against 60 Minutes by saying that the distinction I'm trying to make here is that Trump didn't sue 60 Minutes for misleading editing of something he said. He said he was damaged by 60 Minutes misleadingly editing what somebody else said. And these are brushback pitches. And I guarantee you that the press, that the mainstream media is paying attention to this because they're howling about it. Yeah, sue them into the ground. I don't think there's any, I don't want to monkey around with the Constitution. If you have enough power to set up a constitutional amendment or a change to the First Amendment, you've got enough power to destroy the whole thing, and that's just not a risk I want to take. The amendment, I think, stands by itself. If you want a lighthearted take on this, and sometimes you really need to have a lighthearted take on things because it really does sometimes put things into perspective. I cannot recommend highly enough a short story by Mark Twain called "Journalism in Tennessee," where he gets a job as a newspaper editor in Tennessee, and it is. I think it's the funniest thing he's ever written, and it's one of the most illuminative. Journalism in Tennessee is, I think, I may not be sure that's the exact title. Hang on a second. It is. It's called Journalism in Tennessee. Man, it's funny. I should just read that. It's just, and it's a short story. It's really, 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 really good. Other than that, I don't know about oversight boards or things like that. I find that the best solution for bad press or for bad journalism is to put them out of business. and MSNBC is out of business. The New York Times is essentially out of business. They can't give it away. We, with the development of the internet, and this is how I started, and Steve and Scott started with things like blogs and so on. There was an alternate way for information to get out, and once there was an alternate way for information to get out, once they couldn't control all of it, then it's just a matter of time. They're gut-shot animals wandered off into the woods. I think you can make a pretty strong case that Elon Musk may have personally saved the country by himself, because if you don't have to buy all of the social media, you just have to buy one of them, a big one, but one of them. If you can say what's on your mind and make criticisms and start a counter narrative on X, then I'm not sure we would have won in 2024 without it. We might have, and maybe we probably would have, but Elon Musk's one decision on free speech had profound implications, not the least of which was showing that, Twitter was complicit with the federal government in suppressing the Hunter Biden laptop story in 2020. He's also, I saw him post on Twitter the English flag of St. George. He said he's going to, heard this tonight, he said he wants to put money into the political movement to return England to the English. And that's just, it's just remarkable. The guy's obviously got some problems, but honestly, it's just remarkable. He's a remarkable man, and I was glad to see Starship 10 break that 3 in a row curse on the Starship Mark II. I on some level I understand why they don't catch the booster every time, but since they're 2 out of 2 on the booster, and since it's so bloody spectacular, and since they're throwing away 33 Raptor engines, I don't know why they don't catch it. Why they haven't tried to catch it on the last 4 flights. I don't understand that. I think it's just showing off, but it's certainly gaining experience. So yeah. We'll see. Marisha Dark, topic citizenship. This is a long one. Bill, this might provide some. This is a long one. I just don't want to read it all out, but here we go. Bill, this might provide some clarity to your recent right angle about anchor babies. You may recall some weeks ago I had recommended you read a book called The Red Amendment and claimed that the 14th Amendment was the wedge by which all other subversions of the Republic were made possible, that the original intent was one is a citizen of the state first and the Union second, and the 14th Amendment flipped this. It would be as if the member states of the EU suddenly identified as Europeans first, both culturally and legally. You're correct, of course, about the jurisdiction clause, and I think it would help to learn what the process was before the 14th Amendment. The Constitution says that only a natural-born citizen can become POTUS, for example. This begs the question, what does that mean for someone like Washington or Jefferson, who was born before the country was even founded? Under the original Constitution, you were a citizen of the state, and each state had its own rules for membership back from when they were still colonies. You were then also a citizen of the Union by virtue of your state's membership. Congress was granted additional powers to make laws going forward for how one would become a naturalized citizen. Your wife, for example, would be an American citizen and a citizen of California. A natural-born person, however, meant specifically someone who was born to at least one parent, where the parent was a citizen of one of several states, either grandfathered in from before the Constitution, or someone who was a natural-born citizen, or someone else otherwise naturalized. This is why the 14th also includes language about the state and wherein they reside, because it's acknowledging that the pre-existing system of state citizenship. To add to your tourist example, you said if a non-citizen tourist comes here and gives birth, their child is not a citizen because the parents aren't subject to the jurisdiction. This works both ways. If an American citizen travels abroad and gives birth, then their child is an American citizen, not a citizen of that foreign country. Hopefully that all makes sense. And yeah, I'm fine with your proposal to grant amnesty light and put those people at the back of the line. Okay, yeah, it's not really a question, so there you go. Thanks for the clarification. Steve Young, good evening, Bill. Flown West. Commander Randy Duke Cunningham, the first Navy ace of the Vietnam War, CEO of Top Gun, and Congressman California, has passed away. Fair winds and following seas MiG killer. Yeah, wasn't Duke Cunningham involved in some kind of scandal in the 70s or 80s or 90s or something when he was a congressman? Doesn't matter. He's a steely-eyed missile man, Navy fighter pilot, and I think second only to the mustache, and the dynamic duo. It was so hard to get MiG kills and I'm really against this. I was against it when I was a small child. We talked about at the beginning, with that Phantom model that my brother sold. I think it had 3 stars on it. An ace is 5 kills, and in Vietnam they said no, it's only 3. And I just thought, that's just lowering the bar, man. I'm sorry, it's just lowering the bar. Gives you an indication of how ineffective we were for a lot of the war. We got a lot better after John Boyd got a chance to be heard by some people, but it was pretty much over by the time that really got in there. Yeah, good on you, Duke. I think people's lives have to be judged as a whole life and not by, either moments of greatness or just moments of weakness or whatever. But he's the kind of guy I'm proud to be a countryman with, and if he had some shortcomings, well then, who doesn't? Anybody who can pull the smoking thunderhog through a 7G turn is a hero in my book. That's like riding a rhino, which I just realized is the name of the F-18, which is a plane I fly pretty much exclusively. The F-18 Super Hornet. It's called the Rhino because of the long nose. But anyway, yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I wasn't aware he'd gone. Jacob Belchuk and then Eric Blake. All right, we're getting there. Hail, Bill. The mass formation psychosis phenomenon that occurred during 2021 is not the first time that an entire society has gone mad. No, absolutely not. I'm a huge fan of a book called Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds, which was written in the 1800s. An argument could be made that something similar happened in World War II, and I think it's very clear that something like that happened to kick off and maintain World War I. Yes. What do you think will happen to justify the next one, where the moral system of the populace becomes so warped that they will aggressively do evil and feel virtuous because of it? I think we're seeing that right now. I really think we're at the point now where left-wingers, where progressives are in the streets opposing and protesting a pretty near total elimination of the murder rate in America's capital. I mean, they were waxing for years, and the left is in full retreat, man, and they don't show any signs of turning it around. And when I mentioned the young men moving 44 points to the right, and their efforts to connect to young men, the same thing with Disney, oh, we lost young men, I wonder why. It's a complete mystery. Nothing like watching a girl boss either kick your teeth in or humiliate you in front of everybody. The humiliation of Harrison Ford happened twice. It happened to Indiana Jones, and it happened to Han Solo. Han Solo is outflown by this woman who's never been in a spaceship before. He's been flying as a blockade runner for 25, 30 years, but that's you know, he doesn't have to mansplain anything, and and then in Dial of Destiny, he's just a used up old man, and just a foil for this skinny British chick to steal his hat. It's the same thing in the pop culture. I'm sorry, it's the same thing in the larger culture. People believe this nonsense, and this. You want to talk about? Don't get me wrong. I have no sympathy at all, but this was a lieutenant governor of Minnesota wearing a shirt that says "Defend trans kids" with a knife on it, the same day that a trans person goes in and shoots up a school. That's timing. There have been something like, what is it, 8, 9 trans shooters. And by the way, the Butler shooter, I'm virtually positive was trans, and I haven't seen that name on any of the list of confirmed trans shooters. But I am quite sure that the Butler shooter was also there. When you look at that as a percentage of the population, and only since the shooting a couple days ago have I seen images of trans people with AR-15s looking kind of like they know what they're doing. And some of the captions are, "You have no idea what's coming for you," meaning, the general society has no idea what's coming for you. Here's the thing about and we're starting to see signs of it in England too. I don't think it's going to happen in France. I think it might happen in England, might save England and Germany. I just don't see the French doing it. But she didn't wear it the same day, says Bob Neve. Well, okay. Everywhere I look, I just see the mainstream, not the mainstream media, what Nixon used to call the silent majority. Just regular people who have been, willing to try this multicultural experiment and felt bad about racism and slavery and sent trillions of dollars to the black community, and all of this guilt and all of this shame, and none of which we earned or deserved, but we played along with it. And I just think that people have had enough. I just think it's just had enough. And this is the thing about quiet, law-abiding people. It takes an enormous amount of provocation to get them to that point. But once they are at that point, they become ruthless, and they do not stop until it is over. And that's the story of America in World War II, and it was a story with the North as well in the Civil War. The South were hotheads and dashing, and they'd all bought into this Walter Scott fantasy of a gentlemanly, that whole Southern plantation, Monsieur Candy kind of thing. But once the North was fully at the boiling point, it becomes unstoppable. And I think these people are in for a big surprise. And I think it's going to start coming pretty soon, because I'm seeing more and more and more signs of people just not being willing to play the game anymore. Just coming out and saying, "We've had enough. We just had enough, man. That's it. We're just not going to do this anymore." So, and I think that's great. I think it's great. I think modern progressivism is mental illness. There's no question about it. If you can't admit what a woman is, you are when you ask one of these progressives what is a woman, and you watch them start, a woman is a person who identifies as okay. When you watch those wheels starting to turn in their head, you can see the amount of friction and the amount of energy it takes to crank those gears. And and this becomes more and more and more true for them every day. Every now and then you find a leftist who has the integrity and the open mind to listen to the other side. They jump off the plantation, and one of the first things that that they notice is just how much more relaxed they are, that they don't have to say things that they know aren't true. I think that's the most striking thing about former leftists, people who've been red pilled, is that they can breathe. It's like, I don't have to lie to myself. I don't have to go to the intellectual trouble of having to do these kind of mental gymnastics. So I think we're in the middle of a mass psychosis phenomenon right now, and I think we're coming out of it. That's what it feels like to me. I've seen things like, I've got a right angle that's in the bank, and fortunately it's relatively evergreen. And it's about all of these sorority girls doing their videos for their sorority. And this came out right after, the American Eagle jeans ad. And they just seem to be happy and not guilty about being hot and having fun. And somebody wrote, "The planet is healing." I just love that comment whenever I see anything like this. The planet is healing. It's like, yeah, it really is. It really is healing. And I think, I would think, I don't know if we have anybody watching right now from Great Britain or anything, but I think that if I did live in Great Britain, watching what's going on in America would give me enormous hope, because I can't believe what I'm seeing in America. I can't believe it. I never thought I'd live to see some of these things. And I honestly, it happened literally overnight. It just like a switch got thrown. But I did not think, honest to God, I did not think it was politically possible to get trans people out of the military. I thought that would be a 10-year blood on the wall battle. It's just, nope. The defense secretary said, nope, we're not doing it. Okay, done, boom. And so, P7 2017 is, and I've seen this many times first person. It's a wonderful feeling, makes me proud. He's saying, someone talking with a black man and went with him to the Trump rally. He got all kinds of welcomed. Then he took the host to the Dem rally, and they cussed out the host to the moon and back. Yeah, that's exactly how it works, man. The sides are not equal. It's not a 50-50 thing. It's not a 90-10 thing. It's probably a 98-2 thing, and maybe not even that. So, amen. That's just amazing. Autofocus. Yeah, I was a little. Yep. Yeah. I thought I was looking a little soft. So I hope they can do it. Okay, last one for the night. Is that 9? 8. It's not bad. Eric Blake, tonight the case of the media meat of the matter. Bill, this is a matter I've been wanting to bring up for a bit, but I keep either forgetting or having more pressing issues to ask about, so without further ado. It looks like conservative media's longtime nemesis publicist, Media Matters for America, is being sued into bankruptcy. I'd like to be part of that if it was a, what do they call those things? I forgot the name. And eventually oblivion. Now, a lot of conservative pundits have expressed concern about this. With MFFA gone, won't that mean rich Democrats won't be wasting all their money donating to that laughable organization and may now redirect that money to more effective things? Well, that laughable organization has cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars, Eric. I think certainly tens of thousands of dollars. So I didn't find it too laughable. Well, to that I say the fact that they were so dumb as to waste their money there means that the new recipients of those funds will almost certainly be just as useless. What do you think? Do we celebrate the death of Media Matters or brace ourselves for worse alternatives? Yes, we celebrate the death of Media Matters. Media Matters is a see, here's the thing about Media Matters, right? if Media Matters reported on what I said, class action, thank you, Sarah. If Media Matters reported fairly on what I said, I wouldn't have any problem with them. It's when they invent stuff, lie, take things out of context, and do all of that. I mean, they basically knocked out my speaking career. And that was what, 2017, 18, something like that. Natasha constantly tells me we used to travel all around the country. We used to go to all these places, and we don't do that anymore. I said, yeah, well, there's that. So, so I hope that ship sinks, and I hope that it takes everybody that's on board down to the bottom with them. I hope it's a lingering and painful death for them. They have no sense of honor, and they have no sense of fairness. We did a right angle a couple days ago called "Racist Democrats in Virginia?" ? And it was about this woman who brought a sign to the rally for governor of Georgia, and Sears is a black woman, and she had a sign that said, "If I can't use your bathroom, you can't use my water fountain," something like that, right? And it was apparently hurting the Democrats pretty badly, and Steve and Scott and I talked about it, and we all came to the same conclusion, and that is that you cannot hold a candidate responsible for what one lunatic in the crowd says or does. That's integrity. That's playing fair. We could have piled on and said, yeah, that just goes to prove that the Democrats are all racist, and I really do think they are. But we have integrity. We have character and honor, and it wasn't a fair criticism of the candidate, who I'm sure is reprehensible. But you can't. It's just not right. It's not fair to make that easy and erroneous shot. So, I'm really happy that they're gone, and I know I wasn't the only person that they did a lot of damage to. So, although I don't know anybody who they've done as much damage to, and I like to believe that there's higher justice, and that the dishonest people who play these games, because the person who pulled those quotes about me had to watch everything that I did, and in order to do that, they must have known. It's impossible that this is why I was so angry about it. It's impossible that they didn't know that I was close friends with Zoe Rachel, that we'd worked together on these projects, that I talked about Booker T. Washington and all the rest of this stuff, when they decided to call me a scientific racist, and it showed up on the cover of the online edition of my hometown newspaper, the LA Times. That's a fun feeling. Yeah, I hope they burn in hell, and I hope they burn in hell for a long time, and I hope that it's not so hot that that it kills them instantly. Yeah, that's what I want. Anyway, it's not free publicity. Roxanne, it destroyed my speaking career. One entry for Media Matters pretty much destroyed my public speaking career. And I didn't look at it as free publicity. I looked at it as character assassination. Thank you, Kirk. That's what I'm hoping for. Don't worry, Bill. Every word and action will be judged. God's mill of justice grinds a very fine flour. I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. So anyway, I think that'll do it for the night. Got to get a right angle out as usual, and get back on, all the rest of these things. I'm glad they're being sued, and I hope they go after the people that wrote those articles. Anyway, this show, as you know, is made possible by the members of BillWhittle.com, and we're going to be seeing an increase in that number, and I mean for it to be a large increase. I am going full tilt boogie across the board. I'm going to bring back the firewalls. I'm going to do all this stuff. I got 6 of these things in the can. I might be able to turn this event with Mammoth into a possible appearance. So we'll see. Thank you, Sycopolin. You really have to be there to get that Florida reference. But anyway, all right. So that'll do it. We will see you guys on Monday night. I constantly wake up and realize, oh, I don't have to do the NDU thing, and I don't have a crushing deadline on other things. It's like I can work on our stuff now, so that'll be cool. And should happen a long time ago, but again, you don't know you're in a hole until you get out of it sometimes. All right, so thanks again for joining us. Thanks for being here on the Stratosphere Lounge, and we will see you on Monday for the Stratosphere Studio.